So this is the second devlog for the game that I am temporarily calling The Night Gunsman. The theme, of course, of this game jam, GitHub's Game Off 2020, is Moonshot. So, I had the idea of making a game about someone who has a crossbow, or a gun, but ended up being a crossbow, that can shoot and it gets charged by moonlight. Moonshot, you know. So today my goal was to get the absolute bare bones of a platformer up and running. So my tasks were figure out what sort of size we were looking at for the sprites so I could draw some test artwork, and then put in some code in the Godot engine, which is what I'm going to be using, to move a character back and forth, have them jump and crouch. There are various other actions I want this character to take, but that is what I figured would be enough for now. So I kind of came up with a resolution. It's going to be, I think I decided on, it's going to be somewhat narrower than the NES. NES was 256 by 240. I end up going with 256 by 192. Yeah, that's the canvas size. I'm not sure if A-Sprite actually is telling me the truth about how big things actually are. I had a problem later in the video trying to get stuff scaled, and it didn't look like the pixels were lining up 1-to-1, but that is a problem I would have for another time. So I came up with, here's how big I want the character to look, and maybe a couple different enemies. A small dude and a tall boy. This ended up not being the proportion I was going to use. 64 tall on this field is just way too big. But I changed that later. I decided, how big am I going to make this character? How many heads tall should I make him? That's kind of a technique to figure out how chibi you want to make him. You know, if you have a real chibi character, their head is going to be half the size of their body. If you want a realistic human, 7 or 8 heads for the body. So I decided to go for about 4, something pretty cartoony, because I am not good at drawing realistic humans, or much of anything as it turns out. I'm pretty happy with how this initial test art turned out. So I blocked out a stick figure. I came up with this nice idea of sort of giving volume to the boots. You know, obviously this character is going to be sort of a tough, a tough, skinny lady with a crossbow. And tough ladies to me mean one thing, and that thing is boots. So you start with the boots, and I came up with that sort of erasing to sort of give this empty space, give some perspective of where the boot's pointing. And I think it sort of helped them come in 3D. I have a harder time doing that with bodies, with, sort of physical masses that kind of take up space, but I think it worked out kind of okay. That's cool. So I had to pick a palette. This is probably not going to be my permanent palette, but I just wanted something that was going to, that I was going to be able to use temporarily. I will probably end up making my own palette later, but this one seemed pretty good. I went on low spec. They've got a bunch of different palettes. I tried doing a cool, I detached the front of the boots from the back of the boots. Maybe I detached the legs from the boots, but that was going to make the character look like Rayman. I opted not to do that. Trying to figure out proportions, kind of how big the head wants to be. It seems like the head is kind of big right now, but, again, I was going for a bit of a more cartoony, somewhat chibi style, so the big head is going to stay, because that's where some of the detail is going to be. That's what people are going to be looking at. Program I'm using here is called A-Sprite. It does a lot of things differently than how GIMP does it, which is what I have always used to use for image manipulation. So I had to relearn a bunch of key bindings, but it's no big deal. The video is paused right now, or it's not actually paused. This is why I was talking with my girlfriend for about 15 minutes about politics. I don't have video editing software. I have to figure this out. So basically, I just speed the video up using FFmpeg, and then I overlay this audio track, also in FFmpeg, in one shot. And if I get it wrong, it takes me 15 minutes to know I did it wrong, and it's a pain in the ass. So we'll figure that out. Maybe I need to modify her head shape somewhat. Maybe that would be cool. Make it a little more oblong. That's something to do. So now I've got her sort of standing in kind of this is supposed to be an idle pose. And then I forgot what a crossbow looked like. So I had to go quick to the googly images and figure out what the hell does a crossbow look like. I now know what a crossbow looks like. I tried bending the bows a little bit. That didn't work. What can I do? Give it a big stock. Make it a little wider. Give it thicker limbs. One aspect to this game, if you read the devlog I put out this morning, a lot of stuff on this character is going to be indicated by like glowing blue stuff. Like she's going to have an earring that's going to indicate whether she can take 2 more hits or 1 more hit. And she's going to have up to 3 ghostly glowing blue bolts. It's a hard one to say. Sort of following behind her. Also, I want to put some glowy blue stuff on here. So that there was a little more excitement. And I'm like, this is the only accent color that really exists in this palette, other than there are a couple khaki tones and a gold, but the blue, the kind of moonlight looking stuff, that's what I opted to go for. That's my accent color for everything I need on this character. So we got a couple of glowies on the boots. We're gonna put some of that on the face and on the crossbow. Try to change the figure a little bit, give her a nice wide belt. I don't have any idea how clothes work or belts or anything like that. So I'm kind of learning as I go with this. This is going to be a month of art for me. There's going to be a lot of stuff to draw, so I'm either going to get really good or I'm going to get really fast at going and making stuff that looks bad. I tried to switch palettes. The palette I picked was wrong, so I switched it back. I'm going to stick with this for now. To make this person look more like a person, opted to give them some hair. Realized there were no real dark tones. The black here is kind of a mossy green with a pretty high value, so I opted, let's put a black in there. Little bit of accent with the eyes. I'm pretty happy with how the eyes turned out. I might change them later, but I couldn't. I tried changing them a little bit during this bit of work, and I couldn't find anything that really worked. Gonna fill out the hair a little bit. In the character bio, this character is supposed to be pretty androgynous, but the long hair is also very cool. I was gonna kind of give them a cloak, but this black mass around back of them sort of serves the same purpose. That's the glowing earring right there. That's gonna indicate how much health. Some really wacky looking eyes, and then I spend a while trying to figure out how to draw a nose. Human anatomy, once again, total mystery to me. But I figured something out, and obviously this is all subject to change. I call this Luna Test, because for now, have decided to call this character Luna. And now I figured it was time for a couple more accents, and then we could actually start using it, because the proportions are pretty good. The sprite doesn't quite fill up all the way vertically how I wanted it to, but I also think these proportions are pretty good. I think she kind of looks like a tough chick. She looks a lot like Lara Croft, which is fun. Here's me figuring out how to draw an arm and then realizing I can use shading. Art is pretty cool, folks, and I recommend you try it. Hands are impossible, so she's kind of throwing up the horns. And that is gonna be that. I'm really happy with how this looks. I think she is pretty cool, and it's going to be fun to, animate at some point. Here is where I was plagued by indecision because I don't know what this character's name is going to be. I've settled on Luna for now, but Lutai was one I was considering. I have a friend, her RPG character is always called Lutai, and that, Luna, Lutai, it kind of came to mind. I'm like, this would be perfect. I don't think I want to do that because it's her character, it's not my character, so I gotta figure this out. It seems like a lot of the, typically what you do if you're looking to name a character is you go on some other language's Wikipedia and you look up moon, or you look up giant if you're trying to name something after a giant, and you're like, oh, Russian, okay, let's try that. But you can't really do that for moon because Luna and Selene and all the, all the Greek, Roman, all the Romance language stuff and Germanic language stuff for moon it's kind of trite. It seems kind of cliche to call it, oh, Luna. It's like, well, that's a name that actual people use. That was that Harry Potter girl. So we're going with Luna for now. I will probably change that later. So now we're in the Godot code editor. I want to get Luna moving back and forth, jumping and crouching. That's my goal for today, and I did accomplish that. So by default, you can use the UI controls, UI up, UI down, to control your character, because Godot doesn't care what it is. It's, if you push a control key and are looking for that control key, then we'll do the thing. But it makes more sense to actually name stuff appropriately. So for my cheating little crouch animation, I made a second sprite that was just shrunk down. That's what I'm going to use for now. I'm obviously going to make a couple real crouching sprites for my character, but for now this is supposed to be very, very rough. I've kind of got the programming front loaded in here, and then for the second half of the month it's going to be design, level design, art design, doing the music, and just at that point just tightening up the programming, tightening up the graphics on level 3. Here I got real freaking stuck. I guess I got it correctly at first, figuring out how to make a Godot window the right size and how to make it the right scale. Because if you make it, 1024 by 768, it's going to be that many pixels. But then, your pixel art, which is, you want it to probably show up a little bit bigger than 1 pixel equals 1 pixel. You have to figure out some way to scale it. So I think I got it correct, but I also think Asprite lied to me about how big my character actually is. Or maybe Godot lied to me, because it seemed like when I scaled it up by 2, then the character in the window was the same size as the single-scaled character in Asprite. So someone's lying to me. Either Asprite is giving me 2 pixels for every 1 pixel, or Godot is breaking my monitor in half and making it so I can show double the number of pixels. So I'm inclined to think Asprite is lying to me, because in Asprite you scale it down, it gets all fuzzy, and I'm like, alright, that's not right. But you can also scale it down in Godot, and everything looks right for a character being half the size that it is in Asprite. So I spent a while kind of messing with this and trying to figure it out and sort of trying to remember how to scale things properly. But eventually I got it looking what I thought was right. I got it looking on my my little image with the sprite scales. I got it looking like that. That's not what I'm going to end up using. I end up shrinking the character so that it looks more like, a character in an NES platformer, something that isn't huge. I considered it. I know there are some NES games. There's some Batman game that was released in the 90s, way after the Super Nintendo had come out, that has big chunky sprites for everyone. I thought about doing something like that, but I don't know. I might mess with it later. That's what's cool about game development. You gotta figure out what looks good. I'm sort of making this from scratch, aside from the thousands of hours of platformer games I've played in the past and are part of my mind. So it remains to be seen what this is all going to look like. So what I'm doing right now is doing my normal ritual of this is how characters move in a platformer. You move them left and right, you have momentum, you figure out which direction the player is pushing, and you speed the character up in that direction. You've got acceleration, you've got deceleration, you've got sort of a max speed that the player should be clamped to. All these things are stuff that I've done 2 or 3 times before in various other little games I've made. So it's just kind of remembering how to do it, Googling frantically, remembering that if you return something, or if you expect something to be returned from a function that doesn't return anything, it's just not going to work. It's going to crash. But now I've got sort of a momentum-based movement system going on, and I figured it was time to put Luna in a test scene. So I do my favorite thing of downloading a cool picture from Google Images and then remembering to delete it before I commit the code, because the image doesn't belong to me. I'll eventually make my own background, but I was feeling kind of arted out, which if this is the speed I'm making art, I'm not going to be able to get nearly enough of it done by the end of this project, but I'm not going to worry about that. So once again, trying to remember how this stuff is supposed to work. Remembering how to properly decelerate a character, I probably want to make her do a crouch walk sort of thing, much slower when she's crouched and moving. I don't want to stop her entirely, or maybe I do. Part of crouching is going to be allowing you to aim, so maybe I want the character to, if they want to aim carefully, maybe I want them to come to a stop. So bring a couple platforms, make sure that the character's actually got collision, realize I'm doing something wrong, realizing that I can get the actual speed from the output of the move and slide function, and if I do that, then I can properly bonk into things. So I've turned gravity on, and by turned gravity on, I mean I've shoved the character just lower and lower every frame, and now I want to see if she can make the jump. So I do a check to see if the character is jumping, and I check if they are not on the floor, because I didn't take the 5 seconds to think, do I want her to be on the floor and be able to jump, or do I not want that? And once I remembered what key the jump key was, I realized that I was still unable to jump. But I could jump if I was off the platform, so it allowed me to sort of fly around, which was fun, but not the effect I was going for. That was too much jump. That's kind of a correct amount of jump. And that seemed about right. That seemed about where I would stop for the day. I sort of wanted her to be able to go in between the two platforms, but I'm going to be fine-tuning this more and more. Feel free to watch me put this video that you're currently watching into my Git repository, and then frantically try to remove it, and it takes a really long time. I messed up. Don't put 2 GB video files into your Git repository. Git just hates that. So this is the end of the devlog. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully I'll have another one out before the weekend. Bye!